Hello and welcome to another episode of the O3C podcast, coming to you from O3C Games. We are Jonathan Dunn, that's me, I'm the one on the left, politically, and over on the far right is Chris Dow.
Please don't tell me with that brush.
And this is a special episode all about the
Politics.
Nintendo Switch 2. I mean, the Nintendo Switch 2 has just come out, and we are hot off the press with this follow-up special episode all about it. Although I think it's reasonable to take some time, because honestly, if I'd have started talking about this on day one, it would have been very excited, very garbled. Probably a lot of things that were winding me up very much, and a lot of things I loved very, very much, and it's all sort of balanced and landed a bit now, and I've got some consolidated, considered thoughts.
I agree. I think it was the right choice to take a bit of time to say, okay, well, let's just live with the console for a month or two. Let's see kind of what the initial games are like. Let's see, when are we playing it? When are we not playing it? What games are we playing when we do play it, and everything else. And yeah, I think this was the right call. And I hope everyone else agrees. I hope our trusted audience will follow us along and say, yeah, good job, boys. You've very informative.
I mean, that's all we can hope for, isn't it?
Keep it in.
And also, we wanted to talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza, which sort of feels like the big launch game for the Switch 2. I mean, I know Mario Kart World is actually the big launch game, and Donkey Kong Bonanza followed a few weeks later. But we're going to talk about both of those games and a whole lot more. But before we talk about the software, let's get hard. Where there? Let's talk about the screen. Let's talk about the screen. It's big. It's big. I mean, I wasn't initially sold on the higher resolution, mostly because the resolution of the smaller Switch 1 screens were perfectly fine. And I know the boost in power needed to run a 1080p over 720p. It meant that we'd get a big performance hit for the sake of a crisper image. But I also didn't quite realise how much bigger the Switch 2 screen was going to feel. And I play my Switch 90% of the time in handheld, and certainly going back and forth between original Switch 1 games in 720p and Switch 2 games in 1080p on this size of screen, you do notice and you do appreciate the additional crispness that the extra pixels give you. I still don't know whether I'd rather a smaller screen and better performance at a lower resolution, because honestly, I haven't actually really encountered any performance issues with a Switch 2 game yet. But, you know, if it was the difference between being able to play Elden Ring in 60 frames per second at 720p on a smaller screen and 30 frames per second in 1080p on a bigger screen, I'd rather the 60 frames per option. Although from the early reports, it sounds like none of the above are going to be available. Yeah. So I'm hoping it takes a little bit more time in the oven to cook that one. But for what it is, it's a really lovely screen. And for an LED screen, LCD.
Yeah, LCD.
And for an LCD screen over an OLED screen, it's definitely impressed me. Like, I mean, it's very, very bright, but I'll still be first in line for an OLED model when that's released in a few years' time. But it's a whole world better than, you know, the screen from the original Switch. That's for damn sure. The other thing that this screen has going for it is 120 hertz support for games that want to run 120 frames per second, which is something I absolutely am yet to be sold on. I've played a bit of the demo of Mina the Hollower, which is the Zelda-like game from the Shovel Knight devs Yacht Games. It's a very sort of retro-styled, heavily pixelated affair, and I imagine that this style allows the console to be able to handle 120 frames per second, because it absolutely would not be able to handle something like Elden Ring.
Yes.
Or, honestly, 99% of games that exist.
Correct.
The other thing is that, certainly with the example of Mina the Hollower, if you had a gun to my head, I would not be able to tell you the difference between 60 and 120 frames per second. I just can't see it. Smooth is smooth, and 60 frames per second is smooth enough. Like, are you going to pass smooth peanut butter through a sieve? Probably not. Like, I'm sure people in the comments will tell me I'm blind if I can't tell the difference, but fuck off. I can't tell the difference. Certainly not with, certainly not with that, with Mina the Hollower, and I do not think it would impact my enjoyment of a game at all. certainly not in any meaningful way like equivalent to the leap from 30 to 60, whereas you could tell if it's going at 40 or 50 or moving a little bit in between. You would not be able to tell if it's going at 60 frames per second, or you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between like 100 frames per second and 110 frames per second. It's just again, fuck off. Mina the Hollower, though, is shaping up to be a really, really good game. So I'm looking forward to playing that. But there we go. It's a nice screen. I can see the games I'm playing well enough. That's all I want.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I think it's a nice screen. I do feel, because of the size of the screen, as a handheld, it might end up being pointless. Like, I'm not convinced it needed to be 1080, because if you look at kind of, it is better, it is nicer, clearly, but seeing what they've chosen to kind of lose to make it work financially, and that includes, obviously, OLED. What is that noise?
That's the sound of the Switch 2 trying to run Elden Ring.
What is it actually?
A train breaking down.
Oh, wow. I'll give it a moment and then I'll carry on. The screen, it is better, it is nicer, but seeing what they've chosen to kind of take away to make it work financially, which is primarily the OLED of the last Switch model, I'm not 100% sure that was the right call. Like, what do I know, really? But things like having 120 hertz refresh rate, it's got the option for a variable refresh rate. It's all well and good having those options. But I'm also not sure they'll ever find much usage outside of very occasional titles, like you've just said, something that's kind of doesn't need mega power, so I can kind of leverage it in other ways like that. But I think it's going to end up a bit more like, say, the IR scanner that was on the original Switch Joy-Cons that got used in, 1.5 games ever.
Yeah.
And, I'm happy to be proven wrong, but I think it's also worth dovetailing this part of the conversation about the screen to a directly connected issue that I know you, as a primarily handheld player, will be kind of hit the most by. I tend to play my Switch docked. It's still been the same with the Switch 2. But like, if you think about phones, we've had this issue for a while, which is why most of them are kind of power throttled when they get hot or if they're under strain. CPU and GPU tech has improved massively over the years. Screen tech has improved massively over the years and everything else, but battery tech has not changed almost at all in the last decade.
Yeah.
And with the Switch 2 now rocking essentially like massively increased specs versus what we had, and a screen that at 1080 is rendering 2.25 times the pixels of the old machine, is battery life any good?
Actually, it's worse than I thought it would be. And I thought it was going to be dreadful. You said, it's not an issue if you're playing docked. But in handheld, playing some high-spec Switch 2 games on this huge high-res screen with Joy-Con haptics, it just goes so quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I've got, like, the battery care mode turned on, so, like, when it charges up, it never charges up to 100%. It charges up to about 85%-ish, just because that helps preserve the life of the battery. But, like, Tony Hawk's 3 and 4, this is my prime example here. And I'm not exaggerating when I say it probably lasts about 30 minutes. This is
wow.
Like, this is, partly saying, this is sort of looking at the battery life going from 80% to low battery alerts at like 15%.
Yeah.
And like, as an example, like, I would sit and play on my Switch 2 whilst I wait for my daughter to go to sleep. I'll put her in bed and then I sort of close the door to, and I sit and wait outside her room until she's fallen asleep, and I'll play on my Switch. My console playing Tony Hawk's 3 and 4 didn't last long enough to cover that little block of time.
Yeah, that's bad.
But yeah, I'm yet to play it whilst out and about. So I'm always near a charge point to play it plugged in. So it's not affected me too much. Yeah. I'm planning on, I'm going to London in a couple of days' time, and I'm thinking about taking my Switch 2 with me on the train.
There's plugs on the train.
There's plugs on the train.
I'll say that.
Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty dreadful, which is unfortunately as expected.
Yeah, I mean, I've said multiple times, because I'm not a big handheld gamer anymore. I was when I was younger. I wanted everything in handheld form. But as I've got older, I just don't. I don't know if it's because my eyes don't work as well anymore or whatever. But even when it's made sense to play games handheld, like on the Switch or on the Steam Deck, because it does kind of mask certain issues if a game is maybe not as beauteous as it could be, I still tend to whack them in the dock. And so battery life has not been a massive concern for me so far, but it is concerning looking at kind of stats online that show even like Switch 1 software that might have ran for 6+ hours on the Switch 1 OLED if it wasn't that demanding, now barely hitting like 2 hours on the Switch 2.
Yeah.
And that's strange.
Yeah.
It is strange. But like I said, it's a case of wondering, is the slightly crisper fidelity and larger screen worth needing to be tethered to like a battery pack or a wall outlet more often? And for some people will say, I'm happy with it, it's fine. Eventually it'll be better when we get kind of a revised model, I'm sure, in 2-3 years, but for now it's fine. But you can only really answer that if you are someone who is only playing in handheld, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly the thing with the Switch 1 games is like I'd be fine with that setup because that's kind of what I'm used to.
Yeah.
But I don't know why Switch 1 games are running, you know, like are taking up that much battery life, apart from obviously the screen takes a lot of power.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't know why Switch 1 games aren't defaulting to being run basically in docked mode when you're playing handheld.
Yeah.
There is a game that does do that, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But it's through an
know
oversight. But it's like, so it's like, if you're going to make me pay for it in terms of battery life, then give me
the benefit.
Yeah,
give me a benefit.
Exactly. But talking about power, it is powerful. It's a powerful machine.
Yeah.
It's actually more powerful than I thought it was going to be. Tell me about its girth.
Yeah, like you said, the Switch 2 is way more performant than the Switch 1 for a start.
Yeah.
It's in the ballpark of what we kind of were talking about in our Switch 2 announcement episode, where we said it's probably going to be about a PlayStation 4 Pro or like a Steam Deck Plus, if that were to exist.
Yeah.
But that's not really the whole story, because with all these things, when you really dial down and kind of try and understand what's going on underneath everything, kind of under the hood, modern components have certain feature parity now in terms of base operations. And by that, I mean that games that should have been seen as like too big for the Switch 1, so like impossible ports like The Witcher 3 or No Man's Sky, they were still possible because the bottlenecks always came from just things being maxed out, like we're running out of memory, like within RAM, or the GPU or the CPU is not quite quick enough. And so you were able to make it work because you could make compromises that would just reduce load, kind of thing. Whereas if we go back in time, if you were thinking about kind of, okay, the Wii was concurrent with the PS3 and the Xbox 360, you couldn't have the same game code running on both machines. It just wasn't going to happen. The power was different. The way they ran was different. It wasn't comparable in that way. And the Switch 2 is leveling that playing field even further. Like, there's almost nothing that has been released for current gen that wouldn't be possible in some form on the Switch 2. And that's really exciting. You know, it doesn't mean we're suddenly going to see the biggest marquee releases shipping day and date, but it now has more of everything in order to make the job of shifting, you know, a title that is more powerful, just more straightforward. You know, that porting process should be easier. So something like Hitman coming to the Switch 2 day one is a reasonable statement in terms of how much that game taxes memory on other machines, graphics units, CPU, everything else. And a native port of that would have been impossible on the OG Switch without incredible, like tremendous tweaks to game logic, to crowd density, you know, all the things that make that game what it is.
Heavy Vaselining.
Yeah, it couldn't have happened. You would not have had a one-to-one version of that game running on the old machine. And now we pretty much do. You know, on paper, the machine, whilst docked, is capable of 4K output. That's not going to happen that often, but again, there's big caveats there, because at least as observed in current software, most games, including Mario Kart, including Donkey Kong Bonanza that we'll come on to later, they tend to render their UI, like the whole user interface, at 4K or something very close to, so it feels very crisp. But the game behind the UI is rendering at a lower resolution, essentially. Still upwards of 1080p, like beyond that limit, but not quite at a native 4K. I think I read Mario Kart World is like 1440p, which is like 2K, if that exists.
Yeah.
It's about half.
Does exist.
Yeah, well, there you go. Bonanza is lower than that, but you don't really notice it because of how these games are, you know, produced, how they're being projected and how they're being upscaled. But it does vindicate the points I made before launch that native 4K is just not going to be an option for the vast majority of games, whether that's first party or not. It's not quite got that oomph. We're also still seeing dynamic resolution sometimes. Even in something like the new ports of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They're old games, you know, big inverted commas, but the hardware is still not going to suddenly compete with like a maxed out PC build with cutting edge graphics. It just is not that powerful. And when people sort of day one were whinging about things, suggesting it was suddenly going to be the same as like a $5,000 graphics card. It's just, you have to use a critical thinking sometimes. Then you got to apply like logic. Yeah, just think.
Any sort of thinking.
And so because of all these things, it's positive though that dynamic resolution is much less noticeable than it used to be. Because if you're going from slightly above 1080p down to 1080p and that sort of window, it's not going to be the same as a game that was already quite low getting lower, like The Witcher 3, which ended up very smeary at times.
Oh yeah.
Another big difference, and this is kind of quite interesting if you're into kind of tech type stuff.
No,
but but anyway, the native hardware in the Switch 2 can now support something called DLSS upscaling. And if you're a PC gamer, even if you're a Steam Deck gamer or a PS5 Pro owner, because this uses similar tech as well, you've likely heard of upscaling in some form. And almost every graphics manufacturer now has their own acronym for what is essentially taking a lower resolution image and then using machine learning algorithms to make the picture look better, essentially, to boost the resolution artificially for a very limited performance cost. So you might have heard of FSR, you might have heard of XESS. Sony's got PSSR on the PS5 Pro, and there's NVIDIA's DLSS. And because they make the chip that's in the Switch 2, it means it has this as standard. And if you've played Cyberpunk, if you've played Fast Fusion or any of these kind of games on the Switch 2, you've seen this stuff whether you realise it or not, because that's what's powering these games in the background. When used well, it's genuinely mind-blowing what it can achieve. Like Cyberpunk apparently renders a native image that's somewhere in the region of like 600p, which sounds quite miserable if you like just had that native. Yet in motion on a 4K display, it looks very, very crisp. And Fast Fusion as well. It's got a whole range of different image options you can choose, each with their own kind of pros and cons. But there are choices here that, again, present what seems like almost a 4K image, when behind the scenes it's not doing that at all. And that's very impressive. And again, will help this machine kind of remain, not competitive, it's kind of the wrong word, but remain kind of like able to run the sort of stuff we expect on other machines, just with those little nips and tweaks to make it happen. This kind of toolkit, so, you know, the native UI alongside scaled resolution in the background, dynamic res, DLSS, all these sorts of things. They're all these big sort of industry buzz terms that are front and center of the Switch 2's hardware makeup, but it should mean that it punches above its weight for the duration of its life. You know, the Switch 1 was holding on for dear life at the end, but still getting ports. Yeah, to be honest, but still getting ports that seems like they should not have come to that platform.
Yeah.
And the Switch 2, I think, will have an easier time of it just because of advancements in tech that have gone on kind of behind the scenes. So it'll be exciting to see what sort of things we get brought across. Like they just announced fucking Indiana Jones, you know, which is a huge game to potentially have on the Switch very soon. So I'm excited to play it. You know, I said, I think in one of our end of year episodes, I'd quite like to play that sometime. It'll be on the Switch now. That's cool.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
You can at least buy it.
I can enjoy the tutorial.
Yeah.
Joy-Cons.
Yeah.
Joy-Cons.
Let's keep going on the hardware front. We're just going to have a little chit-chat about the new Joy-Cons.
Oh.
They're called Joy-Con 2s.
Novel.
I know. Named after Henry II, who invented them.
That's maybe the worst joke you've ever told, but keep that in.
I made a similar joke the other day when we were talking about the Women's Literary Prize, and I said, is that for female authors, or is it named after Bill Women? Oh, God. It's stuff like that why I lose work. But make friends.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
that's the real work.
Yeah.
The MagSafe connection is a lovely addition. It's much stronger and more robust than I feared. I had terrible visions of me just constantly flipping them out and clipping them out. Obviously, that's not how it works. But they're a big improvement over the sliding of the old ones. There's also an improved HD rumble. It's called HD Rumble 2, which is actually named after the second iteration of the first HD rumble. Yeah. It's more refined. It's more nuanced and better. I say this, I don't know. I haven't I haven't played the Welcome Tour, which I'm sure will probably show off some of the nuances of that. The controllers feel a bit better to hold when they're disconnected as well, because the other, the original Joy-Cons, they were quite fiddly when you use them as mini controllers. But because, the Joy-Con 2s are a bit bigger, it's a bit nicer, bigger shoulder buttons shoulder buttons on the side, but also shoulder buttons on the inside that you use. I mean, the way the controllers feel in general is fine. It's more comfortable because it's a bit bigger than the Switch one. It's not as comfortable as something like the Steam Deck, which it looks like it would be horrible, but is very, very comfortable to hold. And again, it's just, it's a more ergonomically shaped system because it's bigger and bulkier. But the Switch 2 is fine. It feels fine. I know the control sticks have got some protection against drift, but it's not entirely eliminated. I understand Nintendo's desire to have more immediate control on the shoulder buttons, but I don't know. I would have liked analog shoulder buttons because I like them.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think that they would work if you are playing with the controller on its side, because you'd have to push a button in.
Yeah, maybe that's part of it.
I'm sure it's a big part of it.
Yeah.
It's obviously been considered quite fully, and this is the decision they've come to, and it's absolutely fine. Quick word about the new Pro controller, that is a real delight. The sticks are unfathomably smooth.
Yeah.
Seriously, you do not know smooth until you have done that.
Waggle those sticks.
It's got 2 extra buttons on the grips on the inside that you can map to additional things, so that's nice. It's actually made me want to play more in docked mode just because of how nice it is to hold the controller. But yeah, it's all fine. How have your big fat hands got on with it?
Well, like I say, I don't often play in handheld, so my thoughts are more limited in terms of the Joy-Cons themselves. They are bigger, and therefore, even if I had barely touched them, I would know they would feel nicer in my big fat hands. As you said, I don't find the machine that comfortable to hold when it's kind of handheld. And again, I think I've been spoiled by things like the Steam Deck that just have the ridges and the bumps to kind of fit your hands more neatly. As a child, I would probably feel different. I would go, oh, wow, I love my Switch and it feels lovely in my tiny baby hands. But as an adult, it's not the most comfortable thing. The Pro controller, you've already said, it is quite expensive, but it is a very, very, very nice controller. What it's basically doing, the sticks have a gated system in them, so they're never actually hitting the sides. Something sort of stops them ever getting to the sides. There's no grinding feel that you often get in analog sticks of most other controllers. Even the super expensive Xbox and PlayStation controllers, their premium models don't have that sort of tech. And it is a bit frustrating they didn't go for kind of slightly more expensive Hall effect analog sticks, which means they would not drift over time. So it's still a possibility, which is, frustrating. But overall, it's a really nice pad.
Another one.
Well, that's what's going to end up happening, isn't it? But it's a really nice pad. I loved the first Switch Pro controller. I used it religiously for 7-8 years of that machine being on the market, and I'm sure I'll do the same with this one. I really, really like it.
Have you tried mouse mode?
What do you reckon?
I mean, I'm sure you've tried every single little bit of it. I basically haven't. Apart from I tried to do co-op in Donkey Kong, and you use mouse mode for aiming.
I didn't even know it did that.
And I couldn't work out how to do it to teach Nora how to do it.
For me, the only time I've used the mouse mode has been some of the mini games in Welcome Tour, and I'll talk about that as a package a bit later. But in that game, the sole purpose is just saying, did you know there's a mouse mode now? And there's some little mini games just to show that it works. And they're very responsive. It's cool that you can twist your cursor as well, because it's polling for the gyro as well as the laser of the mouse, which is cool. But until I suddenly sit down with the Port of Civilization or some other PC strategy game or something that's going to make sense to use it, I don't know where I'm going to get the much use out of it. It is cool that Nintendo started backporting mouse control into Switch Online titles from the SNES, like Mario Paint.
Oh yeah, that's very cool.
A nice update, and just a pretty baller move day one to be the game everyone loves that needs a mouse. Yeah, you can play it perfectly now. That's a cool thing to do. But as I mentioned a few times on here before, the Switch has never been my emulation machine because I spent so much time curating my Steam Deck, my Ambernic, everything else. And that's where I play old games. So I wasn't like rushing out of the morning of Mario Paint's release to say, "Whoa, Mario Paint!" But for those that do love it, it's there, and I'm sure it feels great. What it does mean, this is kind of slightly more exciting in terms of emulation. We could, in theory, see like some of the N64 DD titles come to NSO at some point. They never left Japan.
Mouse games on that?
Yeah, loads of them used kind of like a Nintendo 64 mouse. Because they were all pretty much creative tools. Like Mario Artist was in there. There was a polygonal kind of like model designing app type thing and stuff like that. If they wanted to localize them or at least give you some instructions to say how do you play them, it would be the first time we've actually been able to engage with that kind of particularly weird chapter of Nintendo history in the West.
Yeah.
But I think the work needed to make them English accessible might condemn that idea to the bin, which is a shame. I've not played, and to be honest, I probably won't play the recent Drag X Drive, the wheelchair basketball game. Maybe it's great, dual wielding Joy-Con mice on your jeans or whatever. But guess it's cool. We're rushing back the Wii era of motion control, that sort of thing. Like,
the thing that's really strange about the game is it looks so drab. It looks like it's got no personality. They haven't. I don't know. Yeah, it looks like a tech demo.
Yeah, which it basically is, isn't it?
Yeah, apparently it is fun to play. But I'm
sure it is. No, me neither. It's just not what I want to spend my time doing.
Chris, you know about this. I know less about this. How like, you can play Switch 1 games on the Switch 2. Like, to someone like me, you go, yeah, obviously, of course you can. Just put the same cartridges in, don't you?
Yeah.
But it's more than that, isn't it? How is it doing it, and why is it good?
I didn't know where we were going with that sort of pause. I always like those.
I didn't know either.
No. Sometimes you just let your brain sort of catch up with your mouth afterwards.
Sometimes.
It's really good. The backwards compatibility is very, very strong, is the headline to take away from this. Prior to launch, Nintendo were incredibly closed and very cagey about backwards compatibility, and it really made me concerned before the machine was in our hands, because in the official Switch 2 announcement video, they said, it'll be there. Didn't offer anything more beyond that kind of soft confirmation that your games would probably work. Probably. And that was kind of it. But we needn't have worried, because backwards compatibility for Switch 1 software, very, very good. There are a few outliers, which I'll cover briefly in a bit. But the main thing to know is that almost all digital and physical games work fine, well, more than fine, unless they require specific Switch 1 peripherals or hardware. And even then, that can usually be got around. For example, games that require like a Joy-Con 1 because it did something different. As long as you have one, you can charge it up and you can use it. So even that is a pretty solid offering. Interesting to me, because I am a nerdy loser when it comes to things like emulation and this kind of tech. Nintendo's approach this generation is completely different to what they've done in the past, in that the Wii U played Wii games by virtue of just having a Wii inside it, essentially. All the hardware was there. Ditto the Wii playing GameCube games. There was just the GameCube inside it. Ditto the DS playing GBA games, just had a GBA in it. The GBA playing Game Boy Color and Game Boy games. It just had the same tech in it. And the Switch 2 is the first piece of Nintendo hardware, at least that I know of, that runs old software by way of having a translation layer. Now, for anyone that has a base understanding of how a Steam Deck uses something called Proton to run Windows games natively in Linux, this is the same dealio. So the code of Switch 1 games is literally being translated on the fly, one-to-one, to the Switch 2's hardware. And that has the added bonus of making games that were previously bottlenecked by memory or by the speed of the graphics unit or the computer unit. They suddenly fly because they can leverage the faster tech of the new machine. So you can basically take it as given that if a game was once a bit wobbly on the Switch 1, there is a very, very, very good chance it is now close to rock solid on the Switch 2, or at the very least, much improved. And there are many channels on YouTube that have made great comparison videos, looking kind of side by side how big name games run on the two machines. But I wanted to do my bit, highlighting a few games that I've had a lot of fun revisiting with their new performance profiles as well. And I'm sure you've got some backwards compatibility stuff you can offer as well, in a little bit. So, some highlights. Last month I mentioned Dragon Quest Heroes. I won't go on too much, but I've put another 10 hours in. I'm still impressed at how much sharper and cleaner and performant that game is on the Switch 2. Cruising Blast, the ridiculous arcade racer that, lo and behold, has just had a stealth sequel announced in the form of Fast and Furious Arcade, which I'm very excited about. That game was always speedy. It aimed for 60 frames per second, but it had a tendency to drop those frames whenever you boosted, which was a shame because in a 90-second race, you probably spend 45 seconds boosting, ripping nitrous. But on the Switch 2, it's completely resolved. No matter what speed you're going at, this absurd monstrosity of a game, and I mean that in a very good way, it never skips a beat. So great stuff. Deadly Premonition 2, the late sequel to the game I just couldn't get enough of troubleshooting on the PC, shipped in such a sorry state on the Switch 1. Like we, without exaggerating, are talking single-digit frame rates in the open world, owing to its horribly unoptimized Unity engine they built it out of. But on Switch 2, it's not perfect, but it will now never drop below 30.
Oh, that's something.
Cutscenes, kind of internal scenes, are basically a locked 60 frames a second. When you're outside, it is lower, but it is now so much smoother. It makes the whole thing a lot easier on the eyes. I've tried playing a few hours of it. It hasn't grabbed me quite like the first game did, but I don't think that's now a tech issue. You know, it's more that I think the game was being made knowing its audience as opposed to accidentally finding its audience. And that really changes how you write a game if you're aware of those things. But I'm grateful at least now that the Switch is a viable way to play this weird sequel on. So I might go back to it in the future. Georgia's beloved Disney Dreamlight Valley, which she's now hit 500-600 hours on the Switch, I think. It ran not well on the Switch 1, especially as your village got more and more populated and you filled it with more and more kind of like furniture. It's now completely solid. You know, it's like a 30 frames a second, still not a looker, but they've promised a Switch 2 patch coming soon. So that's quite exciting for her. Even something like Vampire Survivors, for better or worse, is now much smoother and keeps to its upper limit of 60 far more frequently. I'm kind of in two minds about that because I really liked when I played that to completion on the Switch before that at the end of a 30-minute run, it might have been rendering a frame every few seconds.
Yeah.
And I found that very funny, personally, for what the game was doing. But, you know, I guess that's a good testament that it shows how much more oomph there is. The Earth Defense Force games, I have them physically. They were all exclusive to Japan in their Switch incarnation, sadly. But they are now utterly transformed by the new hardware again. We're looking at jumps from 20-ish frames a second to a locked 60. Which feels like an absolutely silly improvement, really. Like the games have never been about smooth performance. When I played the 360 version of EDF 2017, which made my list, my top 100 list, it ran in slideshow territory then. But as a yardstick for what the Switch 2 can now do to old games, it's got to be up there with one of the best showcases because it is improving this framework by over 200% sometimes, even under heavy load. A lot of games on the Switch 1 used dynamic resolution to keep their upper bounds more consistent. They are now much sharper and crisp because they don't need to resort to dynamically reducing their resolution. And quick examples I've tested include the Outbound Ghost, Rims Racing, Biomutant, Victor Vran, Into the Dead 2. I was just pulling games out at random that I knew looked soft before. And
Sounds like just pulling words out at random.
But now, like playing them through, I'm going, oh, they're quite sharp now. And the list of these is quite absurdly long. It goes on and on. I've not played these games for hours and hours and hours, but it's pretty obvious that the benefits here are very tangible and very far-reaching. And I can say as a given, really, if you liked playing games on the Switch 1, in almost all cases, the Switch 2 will improve that experience for you, almost universally. It's not all roses. There are still a few games that exhibit weird issues or don't load at all, but these are very few and far between, and likely all in Nintendo's big queue to tweak or for the original developers to potentially patch. So as a quick example of a few titles that exhibit some strange behaviour, Jurassic World Evolution now runs smooth as butter, which it did not before, but it has a weird colour grading issue that makes the game render as if it's been microwaved. I don't know why. I don't know if that will be addressed in a future patch, but, you know, it is what it is. Yeah. Borderlands 3, I've not played this one myself, but I've seen footage where the Switch 2 has introduced like a weird screen tearing issue, which is not ideal. It also has a strange kind of global illumination problem where the light almost oscillates as if it's being driven by a sine wave. So you're running around at night time and it's like, now it's day, now it's night, now it's day, now it's night.
That is weird.
And obviously that's a little bit strange. But, you know, again, it will probably be addressed. I think it's on the patch list, as it were, for Nintendo to tweak in the next hardware update. And one more that is a bit closer to me. Deadly Premonition, the original, Deadly Premonition Origins. I boosted up my save in that game, which I was about 4 or 5 hours into a story mode run. Now runs basically locked 60 frames a second, which is a good thing. But the way this game was coded is so odd. They never expected it to run more than 30 max. And so all physics in the world are tied to the frame rate that is being presented. So now driving at 60 frames per second, if you turn too hard, your car will just flip into the sky.
That's wonderful.
It means that like sound effects don't play properly either. So the car makes weird noises as you're driving along because
that's so funny.
It doesn't expect to have to trigger them as often as it is. Like that will never get patched, which is a shame. No one's going back to that game. But it's interesting. It's interesting. Something you mentioned earlier, a system-wide quibble is that this machine should just be running these games in docked performance mode because then they could look better on the handheld screen, and they currently don't. So yeah, when it's plugged into the TV, fine, you're getting all these benefits. Handheld, you're not getting quite as many benefits because whatever was kind of stripped out in those original ports to make it work in handheld with slightly less power is not being considered in this kind of thing because it's a straight port, as it were. So they might look a bit softer than you expect them to. They can also look inconsistently scaled because 720 doesn't go by smooth integer up to 1080. Like I said, it's 2.25 times. So instead of saying, oh, we're just showing double the pixels, it's like double and a bit. And obviously that doesn't look great for kind of crisp art. Not the end of the world. These games still play fine. You can enjoy them in handheld. It's fine. But it is something Nintendo could fix with a literal toggle that I don't know if they will or not. It would work just to say all games default to that, and maybe just have a disclaimer that says if you find any problems in the options, there's just a little tick box that says render back at 720p. Like it's that easy, but we'll see if that happens. So for me, this is a particularly stunning return though, because I've got such a monster library. But for you, have there been any old games that you've enjoyed revisiting with this added grunt, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a little bit of time going through my memory, as well as my virtual game card collection, which I actually really like, to see like which games I remember having some shaky performances that I might have, given up on. A couple of the smaller games I tested were Lonely Mountains Downhill, which is that really beautiful cycling game. Had a sort of a bit of a Trials vibe to its traversal. It ran fine on Switch 1, but wasn't as smooth as it could have been. And I was pleasantly surprised that it now runs buttery smooth with no issues.
Smooth.
Just in time for the new Lonely Mountains Snow Riders to...
I saw that.
I don't know if it's coming to Switch 2. It's currently just on Steam and Xbox, but like all Xbox games, it's probably coming to everything else.
Yeah.
Another game I took for a spin was Have a Nice Death, which is a 2D action Metroidvania roguelike.
Hello.
It's incredibly unoriginal. You can see it combining elements of Dead Cells and Hades, especially. You play as Death, fighting through descending layers of the administrative offices of the afterlife, and it's decent fun for a bit. It ran very poorly and looked quite Vaseline-y on Switch 1, but now it's also very smooth. But I got bored after about 4 hours of it. The main games I wanted to test out were the Hyrule Warriors games because they both had their performance issues, and especially Age of Calamity really struggled on Switch 1. Remarkably, due to some sort of programming oversight, the first Hyrule Warriors game does run essentially in docked mode in handheld, and it runs at 1080p, and it looks and runs beautifully, all without a patch. And reading up about this, because I was like, was the Switch 1 needlessly trying to do this? But it wasn't, because the original game basically. Here's me getting all Crystal boring tech nerdy.
Come on.
The original game, I'm just reading these words that I read, basically super sampled to 1080p from 720p, which was meant to be just limited to dock mode. So it's similar sort of thing to like the upscaling thing. But yeah, that was also present in handheld mode. So it wasn't actually running at 1080p. It's running at 720p pretending to be 1080p, I think. I don't know. It's not quite the same as it natively running it in 1080p needlessly on a 720p, but I don't know. It's quite funny, but it looks good. But I'd already poured hundreds of hours into that between the Switch version and also the remarkable 3DS version too. So I moved straight over to Age of Calamity, which I think I'd completed when it first came out, but didn't do much more than that because the game, it really ran very poorly. It was understandable, given how much the game was trying to do, which was use all of the Breath of the Wild assets, which already struggled to run in Breath of the Wild, and then add in all of the Musou Warriors gameplay, like thousands of enemies at once, and all of the mayhem and carnage that you would expect. I'll say this about it, playing on the Switch 2, it runs a lot better. Mostly solid 30 frames per second frame rate. The inevitable drops during some severely overcrowded moments, which you kind of want. A little bit like you've said about Earth Defense Force.
Yeah,
you want these games groaning a little bit under the weight of themselves.
It's part of the reward for your destruction, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're like, I'm so powerful, I've actually broken the game. Exactly.
But there was a couple of times where I played it docked and it hit 60. And I was, woof. That's smooth, isn't it? It's smooth for literally like a second when I was in a corner and it didn't have to render anything. The visuals are still quite drab. There's a lot of pop-in. I even had a few hard crashes, which it may or may not have been present in the original version of the game. I don't know. Crucially, the loading times are much, much better. Vast improvement on, frankly, unacceptable loading times on Switch 1, which also would have stymied any sort of desire I had to, start checking off other things in the game, but like I didn't really sort of appreciate it until I looked up a little tutorial video of like where something was hidden in one level or something, and obviously it was a YouTube video of the Switch 1 version, and we're talking a solid minute of loading over like 6 seconds. It's so that's really quite something. But I thought I'd start a fresh save file because I couldn't remember a lot of things about the game. There was an overwhelming amount of things on the map that I just didn't understand from my original save file. 50 hours later, and I've almost 100%ed it, and I've had a wonderful, wonderful time. Like, I'm still amazed at the level of love, care, and attention to detail that this game shows to Breath of the Wild. Every single asset, facet, and game mechanic from Breath of the Wild has found an analogue or been iterated upon to be serviced in Age of Calamity. Like, it feels like a first-party game. Like, playing this alongside playing Elden Ring Night Rain has been an interesting comparison point of, like, taking an established game and shifting it into a different framework. And Age of Calamity feels every bit as authentic to Breath of the Wild as Night Rain feels to Elden Ring, which is a huge achievement from, Koei Tecmo, and it really bodes well for the forthcoming Tears of the Kingdom Hyrule Warriors game, Age of Imprisonment. It's just, they're just great. Like, I'd never played a Warriors game before Hyrule Warriors, but it's just such a great way of framing these story events from the Zelda lore. These enormous, epic, ancient wars that need this sense of scale to fully convey a sense of like chaos and carnage that obviously does not fit in the gameplay or tone of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. Like, the fact that you get to pilot the divine beasts in some missions on Age of Calamity, it's just so fun. It's so cool. Like, yeah, like, I understand the gameplay can get a bit repetitive, even with an incredibly huge and varied roster of playable characters, all with their own mechanics, gameplay quirks, gimmicks, but it's just such satisfying gameplay, and I love it, and just ticking things off. I've just had a great time playing through Age of Calamity on Switch 2. I've got just a few Korok seeds to find, and then I'll have 100%ed it, and then who knows, I might dive into the DLC for the game because I never played that.
Oh, I forgot it even had it. It had like a mini season pass, didn't it, of extra stuff?
Yeah. I'd misremembered that it was part of the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass. Of course, it's not. But
could have been.
So it could have been. It's not.
Isn't.
It's not. Yeah.
Talking about the expansion pass stuff, I suppose that's quite a nice segue, isn't it, to all these Switch 2 upgrades we've got. Some paid, some free, but
that's
some
right.
part of that pass.
Yeah, which is nice because, the Switch 2 upgrades, that's exactly what fans wanted. We wanted our old games to look better. That's and Nintendo knew this, and they announced official upgrade packs for several first-party games, most notably Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which look and run just utterly beautifully on the new console.
Yeah.
Tears of the Kingdom is a more noticeable leap because of how much more that game was asking the Switch 1 to do. Playing these games in 1080p handheld at 60 frames per second or 4K on the TV or, whatever it's pretending to appear to be. It just makes these perfect games even perfecter.
Yeah.
Like the upgrade packs, that they're not free. They only cost about £8 or £9, but they are included in the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass.
Yeah.
I think they're the only two at the moment that are, because the other sort of paid upgrade packs are there's one for Super Mario Party Jamboree, which also includes a bunch of new content in addition to better resolution and frame rate. There's some new games that utilize the new functions of the Joy-Con, also the Switch 2 game chat functionality. So it warrants a bit of extra money. It's not just a big patch. And by the time this episode comes out, the upgrade pack for Kirby and the Forgotten Land will be out, which is another
I'm excited,
sizable upgrade with a new story, star-crossed world included, and I'm planning on playing through the whole of that wonderful, wonderful game again to appreciate the graphical upgrade and the new content. Again, it warrants, sort of being, I think that and the Super Mario Party one are sort of about £16-17, something like that. There's a couple of cross-gen games coming as well, which I assume will release in a Switch 1. Well, they are releasing in a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 version, but presumably there'll be like an upgrade pack option as well.
I think so.
Pokemon Legends Z to A, which hopefully will be good. Metroid Prime 4, that's the big one, which apparently is also going to have 120 frames per second mode. But I mean, I still can't believe how good Metroid Prime Remastered looks on Switch 1.
They know their onions, so it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. It will take a graphical hit. You'll like at best you'll be playing the Switch 1 version at 120 frames per second on Switch 2.
Yeah.
At 720p, surely. But there's a few third-party upgrade packs available too. Fantasy Life I, Final Fantasy Tactics, No Man's Sky, some others, and other cross-gen versions of games announced as well. There's also been a few official patches released for free for games, for first-party games that have given some Switch 1 games either a nice upgrade or an essential polish that they needed. Something like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet now don't run like shit. They still look like shit because they're very bland in design. But you can now see more Pokemon in the world at once, and the frame rate is solid. So that's something. You touched on Link's Awakening. No, you didn't. That was because I read your notes earlier.
I will touch on it.
Link's Awakening Remake and the more recent Echoes of Wisdom have had much needed patches to help their formerly stuttering frame rate issues. Splatoon 3, Super Mario 3D World, Mario Odyssey, Captain Toad's Treasure, Trump to boop, ARMS, New Super Mario Bros. UDX have all had free patches to improve their graphics and performance too. I mean, it's basically Nintendo know what we want. And they're not being unreasonable about how they're giving it to us. Charging a few quid for some of the bigger ones, charging a few more quid for the even bigger ones, and then just free patches for the ones that they can. What have you sampled of these, Christo?
Oh, a few. I like the whole upgrade system. I think is really cool. It's a much smoother process than I imagined it being. I was worried it would be a kind of like, now there's two icons on the screen. Now I need to toggle this. Now I need to pick this. But it literally is. If it has a patch, it just runs with the patch on the Switch 2. If you buy an upgrade patch, it just replaces the icon of the previous one, and now you have the shinier version. And if you buy one of the kind of the cartridge versions of these, like for instance, like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom got re-released cartridge versions, it's all just on the cart, ready to go in Switch 2 mode. But also, if you bung it in a regular Switch, plays fine as well. So it's kind of a cross-gen release cartridge as well. I've not played Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom yet in this new form. I should do, because I like both those games and I never finished either of them. But I did have a brief little dalliance with Link's Awakening because I always wanted to love that port, but it was just inconsistent enough to be really annoying. You know, I've never been a graphics snob. I mean, I've got PlayStation 5 sitting under my TV, and yet I've played 99% of games over the last few years on either the Steam Deck or the original Switch. So it's never been about graphics and performance. But there was something about the consistency of Link's Awakening's inconsistency that was way more jarring than a game that just had kind of a persistent frame rate and performance wobbles. So Tears of the Kingdom in its original release was never smooth. You know, it was doing its best. It was holding on for dear life at times. But because it was constantly wobbling up and down between, say, 20 and 30 frames a second, that always felt more palatable because it was always doing that than Link's Awakening that would be locked 60, and then you enter a dungeon and it was like locked 30. And that kind of like big shift between the two really felt uncomfortable. I found it very hard to play. In its new and free update, it's now an unwavering 60 frames per second, and it's much higher rendering resolution as well to boot. You know, it's just a perfect update. And I'm sure Echoes of Wisdom is the same. You know, I've got a few big games on the go at the moment, but I'm hopeful I find a chunk of time later in the year to do this one properly, because I wanted to when it first came out. I bought the special edition and everything. I was all excited for it, being such like an important game for both of us when we were growing up. And I just never did because of that. And that was a shame. But, you know, hopefully I'll find the time to do it. A game that I did put a lot of time into, Bowser's Fury, which was the additional bit that came with Mario 3D World when that was re-released. It's not only a game I have returned to with this patch, but I've finished it 100%. Again, not something I expected to when it came out in that package originally, but here we go. You know, it's very, very good. Getting the upgrades out of the way first, it now feels just like a game that could have released on the Switch too. No one would bat an eyelid if that came out as a little downloadable mini game tomorrow and Nintendo said, here you go, it's a new Mario game. You just go, yeah, cool. Because it's a much higher resolution, totally solid performance profile. It's got better load times. It's just all positive. And the game, I just had such a good time with it. Like, I find it really fascinating to see how different Mario can feel within the same genre. So 3D World feels very different to Odyssey, which in turn feels very different to Bowser's Fury. They're all 3D Mario games on the same platform, yet they don't feel the same.
Yeah.
Fury is like a mini open world game that somehow still feels stage-based. It's a fully 3D game that still feels gridded and built around these little kind of like marble runs that Mario is bouncing down, rather than Odyssey's sprawling spaces or 3D World's little like set up punchline move on levels that were kind of like one and done affairs before you got to the next thing. In Bowser's Fury, you've got 100 cat shines to find and unlock. It was the perfect 10-hour bite-sized adventure to make me go, I love Mario. I love Nintendo for the first time this generation. Like, it was really nice to do. It was good, if slightly softer and wobblier on the Switch, but here it is like polished to a mirror sheen. And I would highly recommend, if people either played it before and thought, you know, it's fine, or if you've never played it at all, I would say it's absolutely worth picking up for the Switch too, because it's surprisingly quite a showcase for the machine in a weird way. So yeah, loved it.
Yeah, I did the same actually. Because like the way I felt playing Bowser's Fury when it came out on Switch 1 was, I see what you're doing and this looks brilliant, but I don't want to play it because I don't think it's quite there. It's like watching too much of a trailer. And spoiling it. I was like, I know I didn't finish it, but I was like, but I knew it was brilliant. And like when this patch was announced, I was like, okay, that's what I've been waiting for, you know, because I thought to myself, okay, like Bowser's Fury felt like it was a proof of concept for the next 3D Mario game, which would potentially be more open world.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm well up for that. I've tasted that. That's great. And I'll move on. But now having this, it's brilliant. I just, played it through to completion. I had a wonderful time. Absolutely brilliant.
Good game.
We're almost an hour in. Should we talk about the new games for Switch 2?
I suppose we might as well.
We're going to start by covering Nintendo's first-party flagship games for their new console. And what better place to start than with the first game I think most people will be playing in their brand new Switch 2 consoles, and that is Mario Kart World.
Drive-by sound effect, stick that in there.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to get sued by Bill Gates. I, like many others, got the Mario Kart World console bundle with download code included in the console box, which equated to getting the game half price, essentially, with the caveat that you can't sell it.
Ever.
But it was indeed the first game I booted up on my new machine. I played it in handheld, as I am wont to do. The game looks beautiful. The art style is, I mean, obviously, it's Mario. It's, to the untrained eye, very, very similar, almost identical to Mario Kart 8, but with, I think, the added personality of something like Mario Wonder, making the animations more characterful, expressive, and humorous. There's lots of movement and lots of nuance and lots of animation happening everywhere. Having 24 races now, that was another big thing. It's very impressive. There's never any slowdown or frame rate drops, even at its most hectic. And it is hectic. It's very hectic with 24 races, which I don't like it. It's too much. We've just recently had the Kirby Air Riders direct, and I didn't actually watch it, but I saw somebody mention that like Sakurai basically had a bit of a swing at Mario Kart by saying like it was. I think there's like 12 players. It's like 12 player simultaneously, and he said any more than that is too much or something like that. But with the added length of the tracks and races as well, like with 24 races, you feel the rubber banding even more so as it's desperately trying to sort of keep everyone sort of together. It's not fun. I think is the word. It's not entirely fun. It's fine, but it's but it grates. Let's talk about the practicalities of this game then. Obviously, the big twist on the established Mario Kart formula is that you are now racing in a big open world, Forza Horizon style. There are the normal Mario Kart tracks present, scattered around this world, but they're all now linked up with various roads, tracks, motorways, bridges, and many, many landscape features. And when you're racing in a Grand Prix, you also race the routes between the tracks to emphasise how linked up it all is. Then there's the new Knockout Tour mode, which is more of a linear race, seeing you cover a span of the open world, racing through sections of different tracks. And you need to make sure you always stay above the cutoff point as you reach checkpoints, or you'll be knocked out. Then you've got the new open world free roam mode, where you can just explore this open world, find secrets, play challenges, collect collectibles, enjoy driving and discovering everything in this world. I'm going to talk about Grand Prix mode first, and I'll start by saying that the new tracks are universally phenomenal.
Yeah.
They are brilliant, innovative, beautiful, frequently jaw-droppingly spectacular. Like playing through all the tracks for the first time on the first night I had my Switch 2, there were moments that had me gasping and actually welling up with how like amazing they were. Unfortunately, the way the Grand Prix work in the game, though, it means that you don't really get to fully experience them, because like the general way that the Grand Prix will work is there'll be 4 tracks as is standard. But what that really means is maybe 3 laps of the first track where you start, and then you'll have a long race to the next track along largely uninteresting B roads, one lap of the next track, and then back on the road again. One lap of the next track, a bit of a road trip, and 1 lap of the final track. And it's a really strange choice when they also have the knockout tours that feel more naturally formatted to that structure.
Yeah.
And like, I know we've said a few times before when we were guessing and speculating what could and should be, next for the Mario Kart series, and that it needed a big shift in direction to really sell me on it. That is true. But also, I still want a classic Grand Prix option of 3 laps of these tracks and no linking stuff, because, as I said, these tracks are amazing. Like proper, like best ever tracks of the series. They deserve to be celebrated and experienced. Like the Knockout Tour is quite fun. It definitely livens up the en route routes and offers a different way to play. And I'd be more enthusiastic about it if it weren't for the fact that basically the Grand Prix just forces that on you. It just feels very similar. Especially because like the way the gated mechanic works in Knockout Tour, with you needing to stay above the cutoff point as you pass certain checkpoints, That's basically how you play Grand Prix anyway.
Yeah.
It's just racing, isn't it? Like you just try and
trying
stay in
win.
front of the other racers. That's it. You just try and stay in front of as many other people for as long as you can. So it amounts to exactly the same. Like you don't even get, this is I think a big oversight is you don't even get the option to maybe like make your own knockout tour routes. That feels like a no-brainer. To be like, this is going to be like ridiculous, but I'm going to make you race from one end of the map to the other, doing these 4 tracks or whatever. And it's just like, there could be so much fun in that. And imagine having to race from like the top to the bottom of the world, and you can go anywhere you want.
That'd be
it's
good.
just who gets there first. That'd be great. You just go off in totally different routes. Maybe you have to race through 2 other tracks to get there, but you can go anywhere you want. And it's like, do you take a risk and like go across the sea, or do you try and go through the desert and go through that track, or do you think that one's actually shorter than this one, or but anyway, it's not there. The showpiece feature of Mario Kart World is actually hidden away in the bottom corner of the title screen, essentially in brackets. The open world free roam mode, which I didn't even realise was there for quite a few hours. I was waiting to unlock it, and it didn't happen. And then I Googled it. Isn't that mental?
It's poor design, poor UI design.
It's strange because they present it like it's actually a bit of an afterthought, which is unfortunately also how it feels. And it's another it's another dichotomy that a world that is so full of stuff to do and things to find and bits and bobs to explore all feels sort of lifelessly empty as well. And I can't really put my finger on why, because the stuff is all good. It's all fun to do, but I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Like the game doesn't make me want to check all these things off a big list, like the way Forza Horizon does. It's a real missed opportunity because the world is beautiful, it's brilliantly designed, and it should make me really excited to explore it, but it just doesn't. Like, the way that like we still get videos of people finding new little things and details and mechanical quirks in Breath of the Wild, almost 10 years on. That should be Mario Kart World.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like anyone is talking about the game, or going, I found this cool thing. Not even that, Speaking of anyone, I haven't actually played online because I've never done that with Mario Kart because I like being good at the game and I don't want to realise that I'm not. Offline solo play against 23 other racers is too chaotic as it is. So doing that with real people sounds like a recipe for rage.
It's monstrous.
I imagine. I'm really torn with this game. I love the new tracks. Boo Cinema is absolutely wonderful. DK Spaceport is stunning. Rainbow Road just blew me away. It's unreasonable. I also absolutely adore like the returning updated versions of old tracks. Seeing Dino Jungle turned into like a Jurassic Park setup is genius.
Very cool.
Choco Mountain from Mario Kart 64 is almost palatable now. It's weird that they've got Moo Moo Meadows here again in an almost identical form to its already polished, updated Mario Kart 8 version.
They just really love Moo Moo Meadows.
It's cows. We love the cows.
Love the cows.
Reframing Wario's Galleon from Mario Kart 7 is incredible, with you having like the right to ride like the choppy waves to the shipwreck. Just amazing. But all of the new things that the game is attempting to do, I'm just really not sold on. Like, I wonder how I would have felt if the game was just Mario Kart 9 and it was just 6 Grand Prix with new tracks. Maybe I would have felt disappointed, but I'm hoping that some updates come to make, the game more appealing, and also just some tidying up, and because it doesn't quite feel finished. In a weird way, for something as polished and as clean as it is. Even things like the character select, like you unlock costumes for the different characters, and yet every character in every iteration of the costume is a different option to select on the character selection menu.
It's so bad.
Such an oversight. How did you get on with it?
I mean, it's a good game, obviously. It's a Mario Kart game. It's perfectly solid. It's a good game, but it's a very safe game. And it's also, like you've just described, it's stuffed full of really, really odd decisions. Like before, I sort of moan about some of the similar things. Some of the stuff I really like, the tracks are great, like I said. The music is some of the best the series has ever had. The remixes of like recognizable themes and songs from previous games are so good. There is a particular remix of the classic like Mario Underground theme. So kind of like level 1, 2. Yeah, that one. That's been repurposed as this insane like jazz fusion masterpiece that has these like absurd drum breaks. The guy is playing like out of his skin in the studio, and knowing that that's the same band that did the stuff for Mario Kart 8 and they used to do those videos of them performing, it must have been a fucking blast recording that stuff. So yeah, I want to see more of that behind the scenes stuff. So music's great. The other stuff I really like, the new mechanics in terms of like charging a jump, rail grinding, wall riding, things like that. I'm shit at all of it.
Yeah.
But I love now watching speedrun videos of people just destroying tracks with the combinations of this stuff. So I can't wait to see this game at GDQ in about 2 years when the whole meta has been kind of like sorted. So that's exciting. But the game itself, for me to play, the open world stuff should be so good. And yet having no way to track what is there, not necessarily like here's an icon you drive to, but nothing to say, oh, you found a mission, there's 5 more in this area. And then just giving me the idea that I can just have a cruise around and find them. That nothing is tracked other than a total number to say, yeah, you've done 5 of what? 10, 100, 1,000, a billion? Like there's nothing there, and nothing ever tells you you've done it. That's really annoying. It makes the open world feel kind of pointless, like you said, a bit empty, because it's not
reward either.
No, nothing, which is really odd. No new costumes, no new characters, no new tracks.
You get a sticker.
Well, that's something.
Stick it up your ass.
Like you mentioned, not being able to play the GP, I've just read the 3-lap races. So strange. Just have it as an extra mode. Keep the ones you've already got if they're determined to sell kind of the stuff they've done with the open world. But then say, and there's also classic GP, 3 laps, 4 tracks. Here you go. We'd all love it. No one would complain about that. It would be universally positive reception.
Yep. And you can make custom ones then.
Yeah.
And wouldn't matter if they were next to each other on the map.
No, it'd be great. And the big one, like you said, having each costume unlocked appear as its own selectable character is honestly, it's like baby's first UI. That really is like the work experience kids did that. Like even in Mario Kart 8, if you picked, for instance, like a Yoshi, you could choose a colour. It was right there all along. It's mad. It's absolutely mad. The online stuff I've played a bit of, not loads and loads, but I have played a bit of. The Battle Royale kind of style gauntlets across the map, those knockout cups, they are fun. They are incredibly chaotic. But the way it's been built with kind of the rubber banding, like you say, it basically means that you just want to be in the middle of the pack for as long as possible, because then you're not going to get knocked out, but you're also not going to win, and that doesn't matter till the end. And then when you get to the last quarter of the race, then you're just going for broke. People are just hoarding mushrooms to then try and just blast ahead at the end. And it's just, it's not that satisfying because of that, because it takes away the strategy of actually battling through and trying not to be last, because it's like, well, most people are going to be in the middle. It just, you get thrown in the middle, even if you don't press the accelerator, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's odd. It's odd. It's really, really odd. The tweaks we've both mentioned wanting to see are so easy to implement. And yet I am pretty confident that they will never appear because of Nintendo's stubbornness on this one. Like, show me how many missions and collectibles are available in each region of the map, and I will happily play this game to 100%.
Yeah.
You know, add in an additional set of those traditional GP cups. I'll aim to 3-star the lot. I'll have a very nice time doing it. But all the while that's not there, like you say, I don't feel as compelled to go back unless I want something completely mindless to do for 15 minutes whilst I'm just waiting for something, or if I'm listening to something in the background and I just want to pootle about and maybe find a mission to do. Yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. Like, I'm not sad that World strayed from 8DX, because that package had reached a point of almost impossible perfection. There was nowhere left to go with that format. And I like the idea of the open interconnected world, but I'm just sad that in making the changes that they have, Nintendo have really dropped the ball on simple design decisions that would make this slightly reworked Mario Kart the best version of different that it could have been. And at the moment, we've just got a slightly different Mario Kart that also doesn't feel as solid or as rewarding or as fun as it should be as a marquee, like day one release. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe the patch is coming. it isn't. But maybe.
I mean, we said that like Mario Kart 8 would never get anything else.
No.
Like it had DLC, and then we're like, that's obviously it. And then it got double the amount of tracks.
Yeah, another, 32 they added, or some stupid number?
Like 6 years after it had come out.
So maybe.
Like, maybe. You never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. I look forward to that on the Switch 3.
Big patch. 8K.
Speaking of big patches, an 8K.
Oh!
No, that's dreadful.
I keep it.
No. No, as immediately vetted. Let's turn our attention to the elephant in the room. The gorilla elephant in Donkey Kong Bonanza, that is.
That just about works. My short review of Donkey Kong Bonanza is very good. That's the short one. I wasn't sure an hour or so in, though. I was a bit concerned for that first little chunk. I'd been interested in this one since the initial trailer, since it was hinted that it was the Odyssey team's follow-up to Mario's last big full-size adventure. That kind of, whet my appetite, as it were. But I don't think DK Bonanza puts its best foot forward straight away. And although I do appreciate the necessity of its early game kind of properly setting up the player to understand the basics of the game, how you smash up or forwards or down, there is a purpose for how the smashing works. But it's not until you're kind of set loose in the first world proper after that beginning that suddenly you go, oh shit, no, this is actually really, really good. This is really, really good. And it then starts feeling properly like the pseudo sequel to Mario Odyssey that it was kind of billed as, and obviously built as internally as well. This is a bona fide Nintendo first party platformer. And what's exciting about it, but weird about it at the same time, is it's messier than any Nintendo first party game I can recall. Something like Splatoon, when it first came out on the Wii U, that is the first game, it felt weird. It felt very different to play, whether you're playing single player mode or multiplayer, but it still felt very controlled. And within 10 seconds of picking up the controller, it was like, here's a wall I can paint. Here's a surface I can't. And you understood what the game was telling you to do. But from very early on, Bonanza basically relinquishes almost all directorship and just says, just smash what you like. And this is kind of a Minecraft-style freedom that's very odd to see in a Nintendo game that's generally about, here is a very, very tightly refined and play-tested stage for you to get through. This is very much a title about destruction rather than building, though. So it's not Minecraft in terms of like creating structures. But it does feel like the team were directly inspired by things like, Minecraft having these more malleable kind of playset worlds, because the moment-to-moment gameplay of DK is almost entirely based around the idea that, you can jump across something or climb over something, or you can just smash straight through it. And it's almost always your choice, which is great. But as a result, though, sometimes you might feel like a genius for sculpting the land to your will to find a collectible. But other times it might feel a bit underwhelming when you kind of just take route one straight to victory instead of engaging with the challenges you're supposed to be taking part in. And finding the balance of that, I think, takes a few stages to really pick up and work as the game kind of introduces more kind of dirt types or more material types. Yes, there's things you can smash through. Yes, there's things you can't smash through. Yes, there's things you can smash through with additional powers, caveats, that kind of thing. And it then becomes a bit more kind of puzzle platformer as opposed to just utter destruction. The moment-to-moment dopamine rewards in this game, though, are relentless. Every single punch, there is gold flying everywhere. There's collectibles for days. Bananas in this game represent like Mario Odyssey's moons or Mario 64 stars. You've also got fossils that are prevalent everywhere on the map, and I guess are closer to something like Breath of the Wild's Korok seeds, because they serve more as kind of being a tradable resource that unlocks cosmetic options, but they don't drive the game forwards like the bananas do. They're not like the story collectible. But there is a huge amount to do. But interestingly for me, DK Bonanza hasn't hooked me in quite the same way Odyssey did, because when I got Mario Odyssey, I played it until I couldn't. I played it for basically 70 hours, and in that 70 hours I didn't play anything else that it took me to beat it across a couple of weeks, and I got to 100%. And I think the reason for DK not doing it in quite the same way is because of how maximalist it is. Jumping between something like this, and I've been playing a lot of Blueprints again, Blueprints is so slow and plodding, and it's about exploration and note-taking and thinking, and it really highlights how every second of Donkey Kong feels like you're at the last night of the proms. There's fireworks going off constantly, and I swear, if I was wearing a heart rate monitor, it would be going up and actively peaking when I was playing Donkey Kong. And because of that, I don't always feel the urge to play like massive sessions of it, because there's no let up in the way it's all presented. Like, I think with all good art, you need to have moments of quiet for balance. And if there was a bit more of that in Donkey Kong, I think it would work a bit better. Like, yes, you can self-regulate, you can just go and do something else or take a break, but who wants to do that? That's not the point of my time off. But it is a really excellent game, though. And a couple of hours in, I was convinced it would be in Game of the Year contention for me. As the dust has settled, I'm not so sure. I still think it's a solid 9 out of 10 on basically anyone's metric in the world. And it's absolutely a must-have for the Switch 2 as well. But I'm not convinced it will be a game that I'm still thinking about like a generation later, like Odyssey is. Knowing that that game as well has had its Switch 2 glow-up has made it extremely tempting to just say, I'll pause Donkey Kong. Just have a go at Odyssey for a bit instead. But I've got too much else to finish and do at the minute. So I'm trying to just keep Donkey Kong in the machine, focus on that. And, Odyssey can be a nice what if next play alongside Link's Awakening for later in the year. Now, I know I'm way behind you on this one. So don't spoil any big endgame stuff, as I'm pretty sure you've rinsed it for all it's worth. But did you enjoy Donkey Kong?
I did.
Yes. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
Good.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, that's it. I was the same as you with Mario Odyssey. I didn't sleep. I 100%ed it. Honestly, I 100%ed it in 4 days.
Yeah,
I did I did 40 plus hours in 4 days, and it was ridiculous. I did something much similar with Donkey Kong, to be fair, but like you said, like the impetus behind playing it was very different.
Yes,
because Donkey Kong Bonanza felt like I needed to get through it because I needed things to be quiet again. I needed the noise to stop.
It's like playing a game of tinnitus, but one that's beatable.
Yes, yeah. It took me a little while to warm up to it because I really wanted it to scratch that proper 3D Mario itch, which it doesn't, because it's not really a 3D platform game. It's a 3D action adventure with a bit of platforming, which is absolutely fine, obviously. And there are some late game challenges that have some good platforming challenge to them. But it's great that it's not scratching the 3D Mario itch, because it's not a 3D Mario game. It's a 3D Donkey Kong game. Yes. And whilst there are familiar elements to the Odyssey setup specifically, this feels very different to play. And that's definitely a good thing. It feels like a Donkey Kong game. It means that, Bonanza isn't coming in place of a 3D Mario game in the same way that when the GameCube launched, it launched with Luigi's Mansion.
Yes,
and that wasn't coming instead of, Super Mario 128, as it was being called, and it didn't replace what would become Super Mario Sunshine. It was doing something familiar but very different that suited a different character, and that's what Donkey Kong Bonanza is. Graphically, it's an incredibly impressive game. Like, the amount of stuff going on at any one time is just incredible. It reminded me a bit of some of those levels in Astro Bot that for no reason would just have like a field of bells or leaves or petals just to run through, just so it could show you that it could do it without any slowdown.
It's just show off, isn't it?
In Donkey Kong, all that stuff actually has a purpose. And as with lots of recent colourful Nintendo games, Nora really enjoyed watching me play it. She loves Pauline. She loved playing as her in Mario Kart, so she was familiar with her already. And she loved being able to change her outfits and change the colour of Donkey Kong's fur. And she loved going, ooh, banana.
You can't not.
Every time.
You can't not.
You can't.
And it's like Georgia would be sat next to me, and every time I got one, it would say it, and then I'd repeat it. And she'd glance over, and I'd be like, you got it, don't you?
Yeah, you have to.
Ooh, banana.
There's 1,000. There's 1,000.
So I've got about 800 more times I'm allowed to do it.
Yeah, that's it. Nora also loved the Bonanza transformations because they're amazing. Yeah. And I had no idea they were in the game because I avoided all media of the game, and I was very pleased to go in and be surprised. There's some slightly nightmarish bonanzas that you unlock of like Donkey Kong transforming into, I won't say in case you haven't unlocked all of them.
No, I haven't.
Animals.
Yeah, okay.
And you go, that does not work. That should not work. And I'm sure someone somewhere has probably done like a realistic version of what those creatures would look like in real life, and I do not want to see that. But yeah, it's a brilliant game. It's incredibly satisfying to play and smash through things and do that. And like I said, the best thing I can say about it, and a real high praise for the Mario Odyssey team, is that it doesn't feel like Mario. Yes. And it's its own thing. But I think, like you, I finished it, and I don't think I'm going to want to play it again.
One and done. It's good enough.
One and done. But I loved it. 9 out of 10.
There we go.
Have you played any other new games on your Switch 2? I mean, I haven't really massively. I mean, I spoke about Tony Hawk's, which I've mentioned a little bit today, and spoke about last month in our regular episode of the podcast. That was good. I have actually finally got stuck into Fantasy Life I, the girl who steals time.
Yes.
After a few false starts, because I bought it as soon as I could on the eShop because it didn't get a physical release in the UK. The game starts very slow, and I knew this would be the case because it was the case with the original Fantasy Life, where you kind of need to make a start on every life in the game to get everything you need to properly dive into the adventure. It's basically like having to do the obligatory tutorials at the start of an RPG, but 12 times, and it blows.
Yeah.
You are given the option to skip like the opening sections of these lives. But also you still need to grind out the opening few levels for each life anyway. So at least it's a way of doing that. But it took about 3 or 4 hours, and I did that over the course of a few weeks. But after starting all of the available starting lives and familiarising myself with the ropes of the game, which are admittedly, they are very similar ropes to the original Fantasy Life, I was able to spread my wings and get fully immersed in this absolutely gorgeous, wonderful game. There's so many new and delightful things in this game that build and iterate and improve on the first game. I saw some people in some reviews say that the game's basically a remake. It's just so patently untrue. You've got the familiar core of the game with you're taking on all these different lives. They're split into sort of 3 broader main categories. You've got like the combat lives, like paladin, mercenary, hunter, magician. You've got gathering lives like miner, woodcutter, angler. You've got crafting lives like chef or tailor, blacksmith, carpenter. And then you need to combine all of those lives together to make progress on the others and do everything. You've got skill trees and new mechanics to unlock. It's all simple, it's straightforward, and very, very, very addictive. So yeah, the core of the game's the same. Obviously, it's a sequel. The game immediately gets 100 times better when you unlock mounts to ride around on the back of something to make traversal much quicker.
Nice.
That's great. It all looks stunning as well. It's a very, very pretty game. It's got a lovely art style. The fact that you have a fully movable 3D camera in this game is wonderful. It makes the world feel even bigger than it actually is, even though it is actually much, much bigger as well. There's the titular gimmick of being set across different time periods, seeing you need to hop to and fro to the past, present and future to pursue all the various quests and side quests and everything else in the game. Like, broadly, the overall sort of game, it feels more Zelda-like now in its adventuring, rather than just sort of just a series of mini games. It's there's lots more going on. There's various shrines and caves and dungeons scattered across the land, and also there's a huge dose of Animal Crossingness to the game now, because you get a whole island that you get to build and customize and decorate and populate with all manner of lovely things, and that's very, very welcome. It's like essentially what this game has done is it's weaponized the classic RPG dopamine hits. Like, it's so efficient. It's so classic. It's almost derivative. And that's the key. It's Fantasy Life. That's it. It is as simple as and as sort of generic as that.
Yeah.
But it's the archetype. It's not derivative. It's not a stereotype. It's just so nice. It's a great game. I think now it's got its hooks into me. I'll be playing a huge amount of it, at least until September the 4th, when Hollow Knight Silksong is out. That was announced just today.
Just today.
Although it said September 4. Didn't say which year. Have you played anything else on the Switch 2? Any Switch 2 games?
Yeah, a few. Like, I'll be reasonably brief on these games because outside of the big hitters we've already talked about, most of my time with the Switch 2 has been playing old rather than new games. You know, I've put 250 cartridges into the machine to see what happened. But I did pick up Hitman, you know, in all of its billion gigabyte download game key card glory.
Oh, yeah.
And as I mentioned earlier, it's a very impressive port in as much as Hitman, as it now stands under its kind of World of Assassination moniker, it's a heavily interactive, heavily populated, systems-driven sandbox game. Genuinely would have been impossible on the Switch One in any sort of configuration. And here, it exists. You know, I'm maybe an hour into this game. As I said, way, way, way back when you played a bit of this for one of our Round the World episodes, I think.
Yeah.
The Hitman games in general, even in their earlier, more simplistic incarnations, like on the PS2, have always been very tough for me to really know how to approach. The fact that I've found even the tutorial stages in this quite tough says it all, really, because I'll plan what I'm doing, then I'll accidentally draw or drop my weapons when I don't mean to, and then one of the guards will shout over, "Hey, you dropped this," and gesture to a silenced pistol that I really shouldn't be carrying as a chef or whatever I'm disguised as. And I'll get lost even in the smaller truncated maps of like the ease you in stages. I'll get all flipped over and around when I navigate big crowds of people. Like, it's a hard game. And I think it's one you need to really dedicate yourself to learn. And I'm probably not going to do that. Like, it's absolutely a showcase for the system. I wish they'd cap the frame rate just at 30 because it's kind of, it's very inconsistent. Never really goes below that, but it does go right up to 60 and down again, similar to Link's Awakening at times. And it might be one I go back to it properly at some point if they do that. You know, for now, I think I'm probably content to say, yeah, it's impressive, but maybe not for me, but it's cool that it's here. I'll say that. Another whistle-stop look, I mentioned this one in passing already. I picked up Welcome Tour. It's the game I'll charitably call the thing that should come pre-installed on the console. It's £8 on the eShop, so it's not ridiculously expensive. And as long as you approach it with a sort of curious and tech-interested mindset, you'll get plenty out of it. But if that's not what you want to play, then you won't. You know, it's basically presented as a digital museum. You guide the little avatar around a giant Switch 2. You're looking to collect nuggets of information that break down every hardware and software facet of the machine. And that's interesting to know how this stuff works because it goes into nice, you know, sort of diagrammatical detail. You also get to play little mini games that show off some of the unique control options of the device, like the mouse mode, like I mentioned, stuff like that. People were perhaps correctly a bit frustrated that this game actually can't be beaten 100% unless you have a full range of peripherals that do not ship with the machine. Like, we're talking, you have to have a pro controller for part of it. You have to have a camera, which I do not have, so I can't do that. You have to have a 4K display, otherwise it won't render certain things. But as long as you look at it as a more general, informative museum or gallery piece rather than a traditional game, it just about justifies the price as long as you know what you're getting into. Finally, the Switch 2 game I've put the most time into, outside of Mario Kart and Donkey Kong, is...
MKDK?
I did write that in the notes and then I've read them out for some reason. But it's Cyberpunk 2077. And I bought this similarly to Hitman, mainly as a showcase piece, because even days before the launch of the console, Cyberpunk still felt a bit impossible porty for this machine. So naturally, I was all in at that stage as soon as I felt that, even if the game had never really called to me on other hardware. So obviously, I've had the chance to play it on the PlayStation 5 for a while, the PlayStation 4 before that. Could have got it on the Steam Deck. There's all sorts of places I could have picked it up and didn't. But here on the Switch, a few hours in, although I feel quite overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that I need to do and to learn, I do also have to say, wowee, if this isn't an impressive game. You know, visuals and performance first, because this is the main reason most people will be grabbing this for the Switch 2. I think it will be some time before we see anything else hit these heights on the machine. And this is a launch title. You know, using the aforementioned wizardry of DLSS, Cyberpunk is rendering a lower resolution image that is then somehow magically scaled up. And it's genuinely impressive how imperceptible this process feels to me as the end user. Like, I can't notice any obvious input lag. I very rarely see any kind of artifacts that are kind of the evidence of the upscaling process. It's just, not non-existent. You sometimes see in like reflections or hair detail, stuff like that it's maybe not perfect. But for something that is going on behind the scenes doing this much work, those who choose to play on the Switch are not going to be disappointed, even if you've got other more powerful hardware. And that's a really impressive thing to be able to say. The game is, and it's not really worth describing because I think everyone who's wanted to play it has probably already played it. It's an immersive sim. It feels very much like, with my limited historical knowledge of the genre, a modern day refinement of like Deus Ex, essentially. It really captures the choose your own approach gameplay of that distant title in a way that other games ostensibly in this immersive sim genre sometimes fail to. So going back quite a long time now to like BioShock, that's still said to be an immersive sim, but the times I've dabbled with it, it feels very linear for a game that kind of tries to live up to the more open systems driven design of like System Shock or Deus Ex it was inspired by as well. Cyberpunk is properly expansive, and whilst the storyline is still very much the storyline, your input is kind of probably going to be more limited than it might appear. The way you tackle each mission feels really, really open, and that's exciting, again, to have something that's like a proper sandbox. Do you want to do things stealthily? Do you want to just avoid things completely and go and talk to someone that might solve the problem a different way? Do you want to go in with guns blazing? Like, you've got the options. There's a lot to get your head around here, though, and I naturally have not got my head around it. Like, there's an early tutorial that walks you through the basics of fighting and hacking, and even after running through it twice, I couldn't consistently tell you how, in the heat of battle, I'd go about hacking a mounted gun or security system. Just don't remember. Do not remember.
Oh, man.
Likewise, the game also has a sort of digital detective system that you use more and more through the game that's really impressive. Like, you're walking through a 3D render of something that's already happened with this kind of like magic sort of VR tech, and you can scrub through the 3D recreation of this scene. You're looking for like anomalies on the audio channel, the visual channel. You're trying to spot things that are going to give you clues to how to get in a building, how to get information from someone, whatever it might be. And again, the tutorial mission for that, one, took me well over an hour just to get through the mission itself. But after a day or two away, I'd just forgotten everything I'd been taught. Like, when the mechanic came up in live gameplay, I was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, there's just bars all over the place and it's weird colours. Like, what am I doing? Like, maybe I'm just old and slow and thick. I appreciate that. Could well be the case. But this is a demanding game. And for me, at least, with Mario Kart and Donkey Kong being so much more immediate and accessible, I struggled to carve the time out to probably make sense of this world and its rule set.
Yeah.
Like, I played it quite a bit when I first got the Switch. Georgia now asks me all the time, almost facetiously, when I'm going back to Cyberpunk, as she got really invested in the story across like the 4 or 5 hours she watched me play. But I worry that already, just a couple months from release, that if I do go back, I'm probably going to need to just reset the game and start again. Because unless I'm going to make a concerted effort to not play anything else until things stick a little better, it's going to be a tough time. But it is hugely impressive. Hugely impressive. It's a real coup to have on the device as well, just as Skyrim was back in 2017 when the Switch launched. And I think that's probably the closest comparison, something that previously you'd say, this can't work in this kind of format. And then we say, oh, it can. I can play Skyrim on the go, on the bus or whatever. And now I can play Cyberpunk on the bus or whatever. And that's bananas, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, some cool games, some weird games.
But... bananas. Before we go, should we talk a little bit about what is to come? The future of the Switch 2.
Yeah.
And what we want from the Switch 3. One of my favourite things that's happened today after the announcement of the Silk Song getting a release date is people just saying, like, when's Hollow Knight 3 coming out?
Come on, Team Cherry. Pull your fingers out.
Very funny. I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to more Nintendo games. I'm looking forward to Age of Imprisonment, and I hope Pokemon Legends Z2A is good. Metroid Prime 4 could be an all-timer. I am a little bit concerned how the reports of Elden Ring, the port is running, which I know it's going to be 30 frames per second. That's what it's targeting. Apparently, it's a bit wobbly at the moment, but like I played through the whole game in 30 frames per second on Steam Deck in 720p, and I'll surely play through that entire game for a third time if it's on if they manage to nail the port. I'd rather they took their time and made that work rather than rush it out. From Software have also got the Dusk Bloods coming. If it's as good an online co-op experience as Night Rain, it has the potential to be huge for me. To complete things off on a From front, I'd love to see Dark Souls Remastered trilogy come to Switch 2. Currently, Dark Souls Remastered runs like absolute trench. The Switch 1 version on Switch 2, it's not had any sort of patches. It would need it, and I'll feel better knowing I can play one of those games when I want. Just having them there. A few games from the recent Indie World Direct looked quite nice. Ball Times Pit looked like a really, really cool new roguelike survivors-like game. That looks really, really cool. There's a new 2D HD action RPG, The Adventures of Elliot. That's got some potential. Octopath Zero, that's coming out. Witchbrook, that looks nice. Hades 2, obviously. Silksong. These things I'm looking forward to. I'd love to see some more upgrade packs for Switch 1 games. Yeah. Specifically the Xenoblade series. I still haven't properly played Xenoblade X because I'm expectant of such a patch.
It will happen. I'm pretty sure it will happen.
We've been saying Xenoblade X would happen for like 7 years,
and it did.
I want it now. Yeah. A patch for Age of Calamity would actually be quite nice. I might hold off getting the DLC for that game in the hope of something like that coming. I would expect, if that is to come, I would expect they would announce it in advance of Age of Imprisonment's release. Which would make a bit of sense. So we shall see. But yeah, there's stuff, isn't there? There's stuff coming. It could be good. What are you looking forward to?
In terms of games, I these days basically don't look at what's coming out. I just let stuff wash over me. But the stuff that I know is in the sort of near future, near horizon. I do have my copy of Kirby pre-ordered to actually play that properly, because it's another game I bought on the Switch, didn't play enough of, sold it in advance of the Switch 2, reordered it essentially for the Switch 2 with all its extra bits. So yeah, that'd be cool to play Forgotten Land finally. The announcement, like I sort of alluded to earlier, that Indiana Jones is coming at some point.
Yeah,
that's a game that I've had on my kind of radar for a bit. It obviously launched on the PlayStation 5. I could have got it there, didn't. Luckily, it's coming to the Switch too. So providing that runs decent enough, I will probably play it there and at least have a little go. And Kirby Air Ride, Air Riders, riding, Air Riding, Air Riders. I never played the original on the GameCube. I like how Sakurai games have a very kind of like soft and gooey outside, and then are just like for hardcore mechanics, skill-based sickos underneath. So yeah, I will probably pick it up. I'll be shit at it, but I'll appreciate that it's a thing that I can play. So yeah, game-wise, there's some cool stuff. The main thing for me, I'm after a few months into the life of this new machine, is a better commitment from Nintendo for physical games. Because whether you care about it or not, the OG Switch became a proper haven for physical releases. Whether that was for big budget games, ambitious ports, boutique indie nonsense, or something in between. With a bit of patience, almost everything eventually shipped on cartridge. And people like me have curated big collections over the last 7-8 years for doing that. And Nintendo's current offering of game key cards, it's not the worst idea in the world for Switch 2. You know, allowing games that are bigger than the current largest capacity cards, that's 64 gig as of August 2025 when we're recording, to still have a physical presence in stores. It also has resale value. You stick it in the machine, the game downloads, keep the cartridge in to act as a little game license when you're online or offline. Fine, sell it on when you're done. Like, that's fine. I don't mind it. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. But this option, coupled with the current absence of any cart size smaller than 64 gig, again, as of now, means that indie support has been non-existent, as the cost involved in pressing to these massive cards of proprietary media is just prohibitively expensive for a game that's only maybe 500 meg in size. And as a kind of more negative result, larger publishers that could afford that, driven by making a bit more profit, just haven't bothered. So, you know, games that should be on a cartridge, like Hitman, like Yakuza, like Sonic X Shadow, like probably Elden Ring when that does launch. The publisher's just kind of cheaping out because it's easier to say, well, it's a cartridge that literally has one line of code on it that just says you own it and can download it, as opposed to it's got the data on. It's cheaper to do. To add insult to injury, the one that really bothers me, the publishers behind games like Split Fiction, Tony Hawk's 3 and 4, WWE 2K, whatever, they're not even using the key cards. They're just putting an old scratch and sniff code in a box, like proper e-waste stuff. And it's just a waste of everybody's time and money. Shouldn't be allowed. Shouldn't be a thing. If that's going to be the case, just go on the eShop and download it. It's quicker, it's more convenient. Like, don't sully the shelf with something that doesn't need to be printed and packaged and wrapped. It's just wasted time. Anyway, there are rumours that more card sizes are being worked on right now, which is why I keep mentioning the date, because this could be wrong in a month or two. But at least as of now, this is not a great position for collectors, which sticks out particularly egregiously following the Switch becoming the bastion for collectors, the self-same collectors, as it were. Game-wise, like I mentioned, there's a few I'm interested in. I will happily play basically anything that launched elsewhere and is suddenly brought to Switch too. I'm not that discerning. I just like having more games on the shelf and more games I could play. But I think what Nintendo needs to do to help this process is start fast tracking dev kits to every single team that's mentioned, even like a notional interest in supporting the Switch 2, because stuff like the upgrades to Bowser's Fury, Kirby, Zelda, all the first party stuff, that's amazing. But I'm sure there are a lot of third party devs that probably would say, yeah, we'll tweak our game. And at the moment, just do not have the capacity to, because Nintendo have said, EA, you get one, Sega, you get one. And it's like they just haven't sent them out. And it means that a lot of teams are scrambling, trying to patch problems they can't troubleshoot in person because they don't have access to the behind-the-scenes software and hardware, which is a shame. There's a lot of high-profile games as well that I'm sure people would like to port, but at the moment don't have the ability to do so because, again, they're missing the fundamental dev kits to do it. Blueprints, if it came to the Switch 2, would absolutely kill. That's the type of game I think that a Switch 2 audience would absolutely lap up. Claire Obscure, as a little spoiler, I've played a lot of it in the background over the last month, is such a good RPG. The Switch has always been like an RPG machine for people. Again, it would be a guaranteed smash, but none of these teams can do anything whilst Nintendo are gatekeeping their tech for the big publishers. So hopefully in the next few months, we get more of this. Like, it's great that we're going to have a feature complete version of FIFA for the first time since the GameCube, but I want all the other weird and wonderful stuff, please and thank you. That's what I want on my Switch too.
Yeah.
And also, final request. Now that DK Bonanza is out, people have played through it. Can we just stick that team on full-time Mario Odyssey 2 development now? Cheers.
That's reasonable. I
think so.
Well, that's the Switch 2.
Yeah.
That's all our thoughts that we've got. Have you been playing on your Switch 2s? What games have you been playing? How are you getting on with the hardware, the software, the everything in between where? Where's Wally? Let us know. You can jump on our Discord, go to our website, o3c.games, and you can use the join link there and come and chat with us.
Yeah.
You can talk to us on our social media channels. We're at O3C Games on pretty much everything. And that's that. We'll be back next month with Around the World in 80 Games. Our next stop is Ukraine. I've got a game that I've been playing, a Ukrainian game, and I'm looking forward to talking about that.